All right, folks. How's it going? Welcome. We are back for another episode of the Launch Sequence podcast. I'm your man, Space Tomato. It's been a little while, guys. Me and my wife just took a little break, a little vacation. We got out of town, did some exploring, did some traveling, and now we're back, ready to go. I am excited to talk a little bit about Star Citizen Alpha 3.20, as well as CitizenCon today. And we're going to be doing it live. We don't usually do this live, but thought I could bring on good friend and fellow YouTuber Croncy to talk live a little bit about what's coming up. And as you can see, he is here. I know you were all, you all thought he was wearing an invisibility cape, but he is indeed here, ready to talk. How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing really, really good. How about yourself?
I am good, dude. I'm good. So, Star Citizen Aussie streamer, informer, and sportcaster. It's not a common combo, but it's one I love. But I gotta ask, because I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing more about the sport casting part of things. How does that figure into Star Citizen?
Yeah, so I always really liked, games casting, shout casting, whatever you want to call it. Just in general, I thought it was really cool that you have these people that sort of build up energy over things that are happening in a competitive game. And obviously Star Citizen doesn't really have that, but it's always sort of had the avenue to have that be a possibility. So I started sort of shoutcasting with Star Citizen. So I started running my own little racing events and stuff and just giving it a go, giving it a bit of fun, and then started to really, really enjoy it and then enjoy it a lot more. And then, I started participating in some Atmo esports events as a racer. And then, I met Crucian, one of the admins of Atmo, and yeah, he's a fantastic dude. He came to Bar Citizen Melbourne, and I said to him, "You know what? I really want to learn casting. What do I have to do?"
Wait. What was he doing in Melbourne?
So he used to work for, I think it was Logitech.
Yeah, Logitech.
And so we had a DreamHack in Melbourne, which is okay. For those who don't know, big gaming kind of convention, lots of esports going on, that sort of thing. So he was down there for that. And then so I met him there, and then while he was drunk, I said, "Hey, what do I have to do to get on the Atmo cast?" And then he said, "Well, you know what? I can give you some tips and some pointers and help you out." And he's been doing that, and that's that. And so now, I would call myself a shoutcaster for specifically Star Citizen.
Dude, that is cool. So you just saw something you liked and drove straight into it. What's the difference between a shoutcaster and a sportcaster? Are you always trying to break my ears?
It's just the name. Yeah, exactly. No, it's just the name. Shoutcaster tends to be just the phrase that people use when referring to like esports casting, but it's essentially the same thing, more or less.
Gotcha. Well, that's pretty cool, dude. I have seen a couple of your coverings of events, and I love the way that you guys bounce off each other. It's a lot of fun. I've tried to do it for marbles on stream events.
Yeah, that's. I used to do the same thing. I used to do the exact same thing. Right when I first started streaming, I would put on like this. There's this like famous Australian sports song. I would put that on the background, and I would try to shoutcast marbles.
It's a great training ground. Well, dude, that's awesome. I'm really excited to see what happens with Atmo Esports. And actually, considering it's part of our discussion today, like we'll get into it later, but you guys just announced something pretty big, a partnership kind of with Star Citizen at CitizenCon. You want to talk a little bit about that? Like what's going on there?
Yeah, so Atmo Esports are doing this thing called Fight or Flight for CitizenCon, the road to CitizenCon. So the stuff that is public at the moment, the stuff that is known, is that basically we have the actual Fight or Flight tournament, which was has been open registration for the last couple of months. We've got 64 teams. The top 4 teams at the end of that event, which is this is a 2-day online event. It's gonna be a long couple of days. Are going to be basically invited to this Fight or Flight invitational. So there hasn't been much information been put out there yet about the CitizenCon Fight or Flight, but I know there's information coming soon. So watch Crucian. Crucian will be yelling to the high heavens on every platform, I guarantee you, about everything that's going to come out with that.
All right. I'm looking forward to that. Back when I was a kid, I loved Halo. I God, I loved Halo. And I was always jealous of the people who would meet up for the LAN fights and like get together and play the game. So it's going to be cool to see a bunch of people play Star Citizen together. I know they've done that in other Citizen Cons, but I feel like this one will be a bit different given the game, the quality and the excitement's a little bit higher. A lot higher.
Yeah, definitely. Even just sort of the connotations of what this means going forward, right? Like Atmo Esports and like a couple of other orgs, Black Maze with XGR and SCR Racing, and I know there's a bunch of other communities out there doing all these sorts of events. The implications that we've had over the last maybe year or two about there now being enough sort of competitive players in the community, as well as the tools starting to, pop into our hands in order to run these sort of things. Like esports is coming to Star Citizen. I was literally like writing a script today for a YouTube video about, it was literally called Esports is Coming to Star Citizen. So it's a little bit fresh in my head. Yeah, it's been super, super cool to watch and also be a little bit a part of.
Do you think it would make more sense for them to start allowing people to make their own tracks in like defined tracks in the PU, or go lean more into Arena Commander for like closed events and stuff like that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So obviously I would love if you were able to just make your own ground racing or flying racing tracks in the PU and actually have them set up nicely with like in-game mechanics. But I think we're still very, very far away from that. So I am happy at least with the new Arena Commander update coming in 3.20 that DJ Bunton and the team have able to actually given us a space where we can now, we can either do super hyper competitive, let's go to Yadar Valley and get some racing on, or, head over to Broken Moon and do like really, really nice competitive with spectators events. But yeah, in terms of it's always going to be a thing that's going to be most competitive in Arena Commander. One sort of example is, so the racetracks, Yadar Valley, the Snake Pit, those sort of things have existed for a little bit now. And they are incredibly amazing tracks. They're really awesome. But it's probably about 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, if you die to reset at that location. And so you can't just go through, taking microseconds off each of your runs because it just takes too long to go through that. So
yeah, that's always
it's always going to be most competitive in Arena Commander.
Yeah, that has been like the problem with so much of the gameplay in this game is there's a lot of fun to be had with it. It's probably more than a lot of people think, but trying to get it all set up, gosh, like everything down to even just taking your hospital gown off and putting your armor back on, it's just another step in that process of like getting back to the gameplay. So I like what they're doing with Arena Commander a lot. I really do. So you think that's where the esports is mainly going to end up living?
Almost definitely, yeah. There'll be obviously avenues to do stuff in the PU, like DMR Rally, for example, is an event that's always going to be in the PU because the threat of anything can happen is an appeal to that specific event. Exactly, right? So that's always going to be in there. But, things like Fight or Flight or just even I was talking to the Crux Cup guys because I've been doing some casting from them as well. They're thinking about moving some races over to Arena Commander as well in the future just because, it's just much more competitive. There's a lot more integrity with it, and you can get some really incredibly skilled players to show you what they're part of. You don't have to worry about server performance as much when there's only, 4 of you on a racetrack.
Right. Yeah. I'm not much of a racer, but the idea of closed events like the tank battle royale thing sounds so good. The FPS combat that I can do easily with my friends, like getting in there and getting to fight in Korea, and just like practice and figuring it out without, dealing with like a possible crime stat or somebody coming trolling you or something is just really cool. I'm glad we're finally getting around to that.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. Yeah.
That actually kind of gets us to today's main topic, so we can just keep talking about this. But 3.20 should be coming out sometime in the next couple of months. Who knows when? And the big the big addition, I think, like their headliner, it seems to be Arena Commander stuff.
Yep.
My first question to you then would be, how do you feel about that being the headliner?
Well, personally, because of all of the things that I really enjoy, I'm a massive fan of it, right? This is going to be huge for things that I want to do, things that my community are into, like racing and dogfighting and tank battles. You know that I love a good tank battle.
Love the tank battles.
So that's going to be absolutely massive for me. But obviously, yeah, this is a super PU light patch. The only things that we're really getting right are the consignment missions, which just seem to be delivery missions with better loot chances. Not saying that's not going to be fun, but it doesn't feel like a huge update necessarily. And like the Hull C. So I think I personally am obviously going to get a ton of value out of Arena Commander. I don't think the community as a whole is going to be, which I do think is a bit of an issue, because we're sort of in this very boring everyone's finished all the features. There's an upcoming wipe probably. It's hard to keep people actually wanting to play the game. So yet to see what it's going to do for the community as a whole, but I'm going to love it. I'm going to be a massive fan of it.
Yeah, I guess you're a little biased in the answer, but I agree with you though. It's gonna be way more useful than it seems at face value. It's one of those features that's like, we will still be probably referring to Star Citizen in terms of the before and after 3.20 patch when it comes to like Arena Commander, because it's not even just the fact that they're bringing in those new game modes or anything. They're talking about full-on testing stuff in this section of the game, different from the PU now, right?
Yeah, exactly. And probably the biggest thing of all of that is master modes. We've gotten confirmation that they're going to be testing master modes in 320. DJ Bunton told us that in Jump Point. I think it was like 2 weeks ago or something. So that's huge, because that's obviously a massive feature that we've all sort of been looking at since CitizenCon last year, wondering how it's going to play, because that's going to affect literally everyone in the game except for people that don't want to fly ships, I guess, which they exist. You've sort of talked about that before as well.
Yeah.
But it's massive. That is absolutely massive. So everyone will at least get to test that out, which is going to be interesting. And then once again, sort of the implications of what else they can test out.
Yeah. And even as somebody who like isn't super concerned with wanting to fly ships in the game, I can see how big a deal that is. I mean, the thing that excites me the most about master modes is the part that I think gets talked about the least, which is quantum boost. Like the ability to just quantum travel to a destination. That, and then also the fact that like they're starting to talk about the idea of points of interest that you can discover from like a few dozen thousand kilometers away. It's like a different form of exploration that we haven't known in Star Citizen. And I know that's not going to be an AC, but like hearing them testing that is super exciting.
Yeah, it gives them a lot of it gives them a lot of tools that they can use for missions. We know that the mission team has been absolutely crushing it the last probably 18 months or so. All of these new missions and new mission types that we've been getting, and being able to have missions where it's like maybe let's take salvage for an example. Right now, they'll just give you a salvage marker, go to it. If using this quantum boost feature. And having it have a high enough signature, you can go, yeah, it's somewhere around that cloud, and it's like in a direction maybe. And then you've got to spend, 10, 15 minutes scanning and then doing your quantum boost and trying to actually pinpoint it down. It's actually really, really similar to one of the ways that you do exploration in EVE Online. Is like, you know that something is in this large location, and then you're just pinpointing it down as you go along until you find the actual like marker.
I've heard that.
So yeah, it gives them the tools for that for sure.
That's awesome. See, I've definitely heard people relate it to what Eve does, and I've not played enough Eve to know. But yeah, they've talked about kind of deep space probing in Star Citizen and how you send out probes, and they would scan and get a signature and send it back to you, and you kind of have to, figure it out by your own means of what that signature is. You combine that with this quantum boosting, and then you take the economy and salvage, like you said, derelicts. Like you're building exploration right there. It's cool to see. I don't think it's anywhere near coming to us because master modes itself will probably take a while, but it's nice to see the beginnings of that in 3.20.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I am hoping, though, that they specifically do for this. So we know that the Gladius had already had master modes ready when they did the CitizenCon presentation last year. I'm hoping that for at least this version of 320 that we have 2 or 3 ships minimum that can test it out, because I think it's really important to be able to sort of balance and test how different ships will react in different SCMs, how they'll react in different minimal boosts, that sort of stuff. So that'd be something nice.
Yeah. Have they not said anything specific about which ships might have it?
I don't believe so. I think they've still just said that the Gladius has it at the moment.
Okay.
But I don't think it would necessarily be too hard for them to translate that over to like another finished fighter, like the Saber.
The Saber, yeah.
Got gold, what was it called? Gold standard. Like early last year or end of the previous year. So, something like that, or whatever else is close to gold standard, and giving that a try. Because then you also get the chance to actually battle them against each other rather than just Gladius v Gladius over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because, I mean, this is definitely one of those features that we all know is going to take a while to reach all of the ships in the game. That's part of the problem with the game, is there's so many ships and features that have to go into them. So Master modes is cool. I'm excited to see it testing, but the Arena Commander stuff also has a couple other pretty interesting things coming into the game. The front end, the party system. I thought that there weren't going to be private servers, but I think it was Bunton or Kwaku who was in chat the other day saying they're just changing the name of them. You know anything about that?
Yeah. So I had, I think it was last Friday, SCL, maybe possibly the Friday beforehand. Bunton came into my chat and was like, "Hey, you gonna watch SCL this week?" I was like, I don't usually watch it on stream, whatever. Yeah, all right, we'll do it. And I watched it and it was like, yeah, first question, we're getting private servers. I was so excited for that.
That skipped over my head. Yeah. I was watching that and it's still like, for some reason I completely forgot about it last week, but it is confirmed that they're trying to do private servers. It's not necessarily going to be in, but they're aiming for it.
Yeah, so private lobbies, I think they said, it was one of those things where it's like, it's not quite committed, but like almost, you know what I mean? Cool. It's incredibly likely that it'll be committed. Okay. But it also won't be on the tracker because it's just part of the other stuff.
Gotcha.
But it was both that and the spectator mode. Both of those sort of together should be coming in 320. So that was super exciting. That's obviously a huge deal once again for all the sort of reasons I mentioned before. You can actually run events now without going into like free fly, trying to do a 1v1 PvP and then 7 other people join in, and you've got to mess around with everyone. So that's absolutely huge. It's a very basic feature, but it's something we haven't had in Star Citizen for like 5 years. Yeah,
it's really like the possibilities. This is always the case with Star Citizen, but like the possibilities with this combined arms combat, multi crew spawns, like just imagining down the line, like 2 years from now, 100 player, 50 player AC servers where they're doing full on like Battlefield-esque battles. Suddenly people aren't asking for private Star Citizen servers anymore. They could just go do the stuff they wanted to do in those instances.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm a massive fan of that. Very excited for it. I think the entire Arena Commander update that they're doing with all of the experimental modes, the master modes, the tank battle, it is one of those things where it's like, I may not have asked for that at the start of the year, but I'm really, really happy they've gone through with it, especially from what it looks like.
Yeah, it is it feels good to see. It's nice to see Arena Commander getting some attention again. That's cool, man. Yeah. I'm happy for you, especially because like it's right in your wheelhouse. Also in 3.20, pretty big feature. I want to call it a headliner, but man, we don't know all the details surrounding it. But we've certainly been waiting a while. The Hull C. You got any strong feelings about this? Because a lot of people really like this ship.
I've got more strong feelings about. I've said implications so many times today. I've got stronger feelings about the implications that the ship brings rather than the ship itself. Like the Hull C is cool. It's fine. I personally don't have one. I likely won't buy. I likely will never pledge one but I'm probably very likely to buy them in game, like very quickly, like save up for it as quickly as I can, sort of thing. But it's the trading gameplay loop starting to become what it's supposed to be. Now, it's not the biggest part, right? Like, we still need a more dynamic economy. That's the main thing that people are waiting for. But at least we're going to be able to trade actual high volume cargo in probably one of the most long-awaited ships ever, I think.
Yeah, it's like 10 years. I'm pretty sure it was introduced in 2013 or 14. Like, this is like a 10-year-old concept. When people talk about giving us the backlog, this is like what they're talking about.
Yeah, everyone sort of always talks about, when ships get like pushed down the pipeline or whatever. I think the Hull C probably has been pushed down further and further than any, and it's finally coming to fruition, which is nice. I do really love, so they did their ISC specifically on it. And I do love the animations that it has when the spline comes out. That looks fantastic. That's really, really cool. I want to see it in action. I want to see it actually doing some trading and people trying to pirate it, or people trying to do, salvage with it, like put all their boxes from salvage onto the Hull C, whatever it might be.
Oh my gosh. That would take so
well, because
long.
right now, right, if you're doing like big hefty salvage, you're either just using the Reclaimer as is, or you're using the Hercules as like your cargo storage, which is kind of annoying. The advantage that the Hull C has is the external, for this instance, is the external cargo. It doesn't take as long for me to just go tractor beam here, move over there. It's already like it's just immediately on the board, right? So
it's basically floating in space for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely going to be a thing we'll see, I'm sure.
So an interesting question that comes with the Hull C is that the Hull A is fine because it uses the small 1 SCU boxes, but if we were to package a Hull C with 1 SCU boxes, I think we'd break everything in the world. So do you think they're bringing out larger cargo boxes with this ship, or are they going to try and make that work?
I think they are. Based on that video that they were showing, it does look like we will have those boxes. Mm-hmm. I don't imagine them introducing boxes that we can't interact with now that we are able to, ever since 317, I think it was. No, maybe it was 318. Whenever we started to be able to interact with the 1 SCU boxes. I think that was 318, actually.
Yeah, when the cargo refactor.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So ever since then, I don't see a reason that they wouldn't give us the 32 SCU boxes, but I also think we're going to be able to temporarily move them. So, like, I don't think we're going to be getting the vehicle tractor beams by any mean, just because I feel like that is a feature they would have mentioned, because they have in the past. They're very excited about it and the implications that has for the gameplay. So the 32 SCU boxes, I think we're probably just going to be able to hand tractor beam for now. Or we may end up getting the rifle tractor beam with the patch as well. But I think we'll get them. I think we'll get them in the patch.
That's a good distinction, because the multi-tool is the size. I think the multi-tool attachment is like technically a size 0 tractor beam, and these 32 SU boxes are probably going to need like a size 2 or 3, which is definitely upgraded. So I know we saw this when ISC came out earlier this year, and people kind of thought tractor beams looked too strong because they were messing around with them. People are going to be losing it that the handheld version is moving the 32 SU boxes, but you think that's going to be like a temporary thing until they got vehicle tractor beams working?
Yeah, it just sort of makes sense to me, because they just did that, right? The while we had the cargo refactor, the extra power to the tractor beams, I believe, was 319. So it sort of just makes sense to have it there. You've already beefed it up now. If you're not planning on releasing vehicle tractor beams, I don't see why you wouldn't just give these the temporary power to do this. You are changing far fewer things by giving us the 32 SCU boxes and letting us small tractor beam them than you would be far in the future when you have to go from, here's 4,001 SCU boxes to finally having the 32s and the large tractor beams and the vehicle tractor beams, all that sort of stuff. It just makes sense in my mind.
I do hope that it's eventually all mass based. I think that is the plan, but like you can move an empty 32 SU box with the small thing because there's no mass in it, but once you load it, you need to get a stronger tractor beam. That would be a nice little dynamic.
It would. I don't think that's something we're going to see for a while. Like, even just empty boxes, large boxes like that, I don't think we're going to see for a very long time, though.
Yeah, that's fair. How about the economy side of things, supply and demand? That's kind of what everyone's asking questions about, is we're going to get the whole seat. Can we even fill it up with stuff What are your opinions on that? You think they'll do anything to update that in 320? You think it's already good enough?
You can fill it up now. I don't know why there's this myth out there that you can't fill it up with stuff. You can't fill it up with the best stuff, but
Right.
that's not really what that vehicle's for. It's there for mass hauling. This is the ship where you will make a decent amount of money hauling nothing but 4,000 SCU of scrap, just because you've got so much of it. If you're making like 0.1 SCU per unit or whatever, like it ends up sort of being worth it when you've got that much. And if you look, yeah, like those amounts do exist and are in the locations where it's going to be able to trade. At the same time, there will be so many people using the Hull C.
Oh my gosh.
That maybe there won't be enough. So it's kind of double-edged, right? So I think if it does become an issue, I don't think it's likely to be a hard issue for them to fix. If they're literally like way too many people are trading, I'm sure they can just go like, all right, scrap and waste timers are now like refill 5,000 SCU every 20 seconds, right?
Or just like pump up the pirate counts around these areas. NPC pirates.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's necessarily an issue, but I do think we're not going to be trading a large variety of stuff with the Hull C until we get more, like literally more systems. Like I can imagine, you know, if you're, for whatever reason, if you're brave enough to trade from like Pyro Station, what's it called? What's the Pyro Station called? Ruin Station. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you're trying to trade, from Ruin Station to all the way into Stanton, I would expect the commodities you can buy at Ruin Station are probably a bit more spicy than just scrap. And then, you know, you do actually have the ability to sell that stuff. One thing I would like to see them do, though, as soon as possible, I don't think we're going to get it in 320, is just let me store it in my local inventory. Because what I want to be able to do is take my whatever trading ship I'm using for ground trading, so, you know, a Caterpillar or a Hercules, whatever, start gathering up the really expensive materials, then take it to the station so that I can Hull C it somewhere else.
Right.
That's I think going to be the biggest thing that's going to impact the Hull C, but I don't see that happening super soon.
I feel like they need to make missions, right? To guide people into that sort of habit so that we get used to that idea, because they've got this whole plan for Hull C's and D's and E's being that sort of inter-system station-to-station transit, and then like your smaller things, like you were saying, your Caterpillar, your C2 stuff would go down to the planet. Like, sort of, they introduced salvage missions, which kind of taught people how to salvage. I feel like they need to give us cargo hauling actual missions that tell you, like as a beginner, hey, take this 42 SCU of this from New Babbage up to the station. Hey, go to SMO 18 and take this much whatever, you know, agriculture material up to New Babbage. And then like you do that over and over till it eventually spawns one at the station. But that feels like it's just so far away.
It does. I mean, every time we get to talk about like a new mechanic coming into the game or anything, it's like, this is so awesome, and it would be the best feature ever in 6 years when we get the next part of it. So
the age-old song.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I do think that they could do in regards to all this is like, so we have the cargo decks, which right now, like you would think cargo deck, the Hull C can only trade in these stations, make the cargo deck a bit more important. Is I don't know why that's not where we manage cargo inventory. That would make sense to me, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would assume that's also how it works in the real world. I don't work at a docks or anything, but I would assume, you know, if a company has X amount of cargo coming in or whatnot, that they're able to pay to have that amount stored there for a certain amount of time.
Right.
And it would just make a lot more sense for that to be there and be able to manage it into sort of what I was mentioning before.
Geez, cargo decks, man. I remember when those you were playing when those came into the game, right?
Just. I've been playing for a couple months.
That was like one of the last times they added something that was like almost entirely vanity. I mean, it had a store in it, but it was like they just moved stuff from the other store into that location. But they added those cargo decks, and they were building them up. And I think we all should have known because they were never talking about gameplay, but they added them, and they were just like, yeah, now they're there. We'll We'll use that for cargo hauling at some point. Everybody's like,
Well,
you just added a new elevator.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It came out when the Hull C was on the tracker for the patch afterwards.
Yeah.
And they were saying that it was going to be, like, relevant for that. It currently isn't, but, like, the priorities change and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean,
so, yeah.
The cargo refactor was a ways away at that point. I mean, I remember when the raft came in, and it felt like the raft was also preceding the cargo refactor, but again, it was pushed back like another year after that. So it's just, the cargo decks, I think, give a lot of people a sour taste in the mouth. It'll be nice to see them be more useful.
Yeah, and I think it's an asset. Like, it's a nice asset. It is. It's a cool little level. It's fun to walk around and stuff. There's just nothing to do there.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so Hull C, solid center of the park edition. I'm excited to see what kind of gameplay that creates for people. See how many Hull Cs group up together and crash into some city somewhere. I don't know. People are going to do crazy stuff with that ship, What else is coming with 3.20? I know I don't even have it pulled up in front of me, but we've got new missions, right? We've got the consignment mission, what I think you talked about a little bit, and then we've also got the a new salvage mission. They've been talking about mining missions, but they haven't talked about it in terms of 3.20. Do you think we might see that?
They have, and then my understanding was that there was some conflicting information. So originally, mining missions were set for 320. We were supposed to be getting them, and they were more or less going to be the exact same as the salvage missions that we have now.
Right.
Is that here is a location, it has X amount of rocks in it, rock spawns, whatever. You pay the price, you go there, like it's done. A relatively easy mission to sort of understand, right? But then they said that was no longer a priority, and they were going to work on it afterwards, and it hasn't been talked about since. So I was still hoping that it would maybe pop up for 320. I think at this stage, it's probably too late for them to add any mechanics like that to the 320 sort of build. Because we're sort of at that stage right now where, PTU could probably happen at any moment, probably the next couple of weeks, or at least it seems that way. Could be wrong, right? But the amount of things that have been committed, that seems on track. So I'm hoping we still get mining missions, but I don't think we can get them in 320. But the retrieve consignment missions, while I did say earlier that it's not much content necessarily, I am actually really excited for. So for the longest time, bunker missions, which are some of the most fun missions in my opinion, just because it's just some fun PvE action.
They're like the default.
Yeah, exactly. For the longest time, all we had for those was the evict illegal occupants and the drugs. And then we finally got... God,
the drugs. Yeah. It was miserable. Just like punching boxes of drugs.
Well, and stealing the best ones, to be fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, for the longest time, we only had those two. And then they added... there was the big patch where they added like a bunch of additional bunkers. We got the wave missions in the bunkers, which were a ton of fun. We got like the delivery missions in the bunkers, that sort of stuff. And so that was awesome. I really enjoyed when they brought that in. The retrieve consignment missions almost sound like the wave missions with better loot from sort of how they're talking about it. So it kind of feels like it's going to be almost like a raid in like other FPS games, like in Tarkov or wherever, where you're just going in and trying to get the best loot. So it could be very interesting if they put some spicy prizes in there.
Yeah, I like that. The way they kind of presented it was like they're actually marking out the modules. We got Call to Prayer in the background for everybody wondering. They mark out the modules of this mission in like, they say that, okay, you've got the dispenser module here. You've got the, what did they call it? The anti-up module, which spawns in the enemies. And they're starting to actually define to us how missions are being constructed by different chunks. Man, that sounds really good for future missions, though.
It does, and it's not surprising because the mission team, as I said earlier, the mission team's been absolutely crushing it the last 18 months, right? And we know that what they've got working on in the background is also sort of just as exciting. But I wouldn't be surprised as well if this is a future-proof mission type. So pretty much every bunker mission that we've had in the past will eventually just not exist when we get these new bunkers, theoretically, right? I don't know if they're going to reuse the assets and whatnot, but they will at least feel old. But the retrieve consignment mission feels like it's super malleable. So no matter what the location, you can just set up a dispensary here, these pockets of loot spawns, and then the mission just goes. So yeah.
And like you said, just like a dungeon. Like take that, put it in a building interior, put it in an underground facility, put it in an outpost. Like you start to get these dungeons that play out in different locations. A lot of good times, man. So this one, could you lay out again how it works? Because it seems like this is actually a pretty good group mission, right?
Yeah, oh, definitely. From the way that they've been talking about it, for sure. So the idea is that you go to a location which is going to have hostels, most likely. I think there is an implication that maybe some don't, but the good ones will have hostels. You will have a certain item to retrieve, which you will get off like a boss spawn. You'll find similar to how we do on SPK right now, or how we did during Siege of Orison. You'll get a boss spawn, you'll get a code that opens up a box or a dispenser, and that'll start chucking out loot. But they have mentioned that there will be multiple of these dispensaries and locations, and they will just chuck out good loot as well. So you won't just be looting the item that you need to complete the mission. You'll also be getting maybe some boxes of maize that you can go sell, or maybe they'll drop some loot boxes, like the small like blue loot boxes that we see at like Ghost Hollow. And then that's just loot for you. That's just stuff that you can win. But while that's happening, once again, it's kind of like an endless wave, which once again, similar to SPK, where they'll keep respawning, and you kind of have to just keep fighting them until you get the loot, or you're happy with how much loot you have and you leave.
Or you just rob all the loot of the bad guys and leave with that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like that. It's I'm looking forward to seeing how far people can push it, how many waves of enemies come, because if it's a lot, then like you could just keep farming money and having fun, and who doesn't like that?
Yeah, especially like I said, right now I feel like a lot of people are a bit sort of over the recent content. There hasn't been, we had a massive drought before 3.18, and then I feel like all of us, because 3.18 came out, we just like tried to play as much as we can. Obviously, we had issues 3.18.
Yes.
3.19, same thing. We just tried to play as much as we can. And I feel like a lot of people, obviously some people aren't, but a lot of people are just burnt out. Having something like the Retrieve Consignment, which is, a repeatable mission. And remember, this is not committed yet, so there is still a chance it gets pushed out. But having a mission like this that's repeatable, that has these nice random rewards, is really important.
Yeah. A little detour based on just what you were saying about how people have been feeling about these patches. I feel like 3.18, with the way it was laying out, felt kind of like 3.0, right? That we had this huge break off before the game saw a big upgrade. Problem being, like, the big upgrade was PES, and that just wasn't a game changer on its own. Like, it's changed the game in that everybody seems to be able to develop things differently and more, and obviously server meshing is a big thing that's enabled by it, but like, I think ultimately people were just kind of let down by how long they waited and then how little actually changed for them. Do you think that we will see another influx of interest? I mean, it's kind of obvious we will, but like, do you think that energy that was starting with the build up to 3.18 will be continued once server meshing finally comes? Or do you think people have kind of lost it?
Of course. I don't think the people who are like more disinterested in Star Citizen right now are going to like everyone's coming back. I almost guarantee you everyone's coming back for server meshing and pyro. There's just no way. We will hit like most if servers survive, we will definitely hit most amount of players at one time during that for sure. So I don't think that's necessarily an issue. I just think 320 is not going to be that patch, right? 320 is just kind of, while there's exciting stuff for a bunch of people and a bunch of people that I know and I interact with, I know that the entire community is going to be probably let down by this patch.
Yay. Do you think 4.0 this year?
No shot.
Okay.
But I do think we will. So obviously, Well, this was one of the topics of CitizenCon, right? So CitizenCon's coming up. It's like what, 3 months away, almost on the dot. We're probably going to see more pyro, but I think we'll likely see. We will know what features are going to come with 4.0. I think at CitizenCon, because it'll be pyro plus, more missions, probably bunkers, all this sort of stuff. But I don't think we're going to see that this year. What I think we'll see instead is we'll probably see a 321 patch that is likely going to be sort of more in the realm of 319, where it's maybe got one really interesting like primary mechanic, like how we had the salvage beams. Probably not going to be as complex, but probably just as impactful. And then plus a couple of small things. So yeah, I don't think we'll see pyro till next year.
Okay. Well, we will see. I think it's feeling less likely. It's all based on communication right now. It's just incredibly quiet communication. I mean, even surrounding 3.20, we've never really been at this stage and not like. I guess one of the questions I actually had here for you was like, when the heck is this update coming? Because this isn't like, it's not normal. This isn't. It's different from how any other year has functioned. We know these patches usually come in like the end of July, early August. Clearly this one isn't, since it's not even in PTU yet. When do you think we might see it?
I think we will see it in PTU in the next couple of weeks, possibly as early as next week, because the majority of the stuff is Arena Commander. It's a lot easier and faster for them to test all of the Arena Commander stuff and make sure that's in a decent state. And then the other stuff that's like PU focused, right? So Seraphim Station, the Crusader platforms, which are more or less copy pastes, with like, I'm sure they'll move some buildings and they'll move some trees and that sort of stuff. And like the retrieval missions, that's not going to require as much time in Evocati, I would assume. So yeah, I would expect PTU within the next couple of weeks. But then the big thing is this will be a completely new build, whereas 319 was on the 318 build. Right. So all of the bugs that happened in 318 and were fixed did not replicate in 319 because it was on the same build. We may see those bugs come back in 320. We may see a bunch of new bugs come in 320. It may be more stable in 320. We don't know. They haven't really been talking about the changes that they've been making to PES in the background since they've implemented it, which I would really, really be interesting to know what they've been doing actually.
They've kind of just...
So it could be either way.
They've mentioned in the monthly reports that like the core engine team is finally getting all the stuff they've been working on over the last 6 months. But like, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what those mumble jumble words mean. I want like, does that mean it's going to be more or less stable? I don't know, but it does. Yeah, being on a new development branch in 320 offers some interesting possibilities. I do really hope that it's a more stable patch, because we all know that 4.0 is probably not going to be.
It'll be super interesting, because I also feel like 4.0 will be in PTU for minimum 3 months. I almost guarantee, right? It's going to be an extreme wild west of testing in the same way that PES was. We were in 318 PTU for 3 months, right? And then we thought they had it because at the end of the PTU, everything was stable. And then first day of launch, everything collapsed.
Everything burned. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the exact same thing will happen.
The worst couple of weeks in Star Citizen's history, as far as like the game, actually playing the game could go. That was rough.
Yeah, it was certainly, I was never there for, like, so I started at like 3.8. And yeah, from 3.8 onwards, I have never had such a bad experience playing the game than I did for that probably like 2.5 weeks.
Whew. Yeah, that's why we could use a stability fix. One of the biggest problems that's been plaguing people these last couple patches have been invisible characters. I don't think they've said anything about a fix for that coming to 3.20. Have you heard anything?
There's a lot of chatter in Spectrum and on Twitter with a couple of the devs and stuff about they are really, really trying to figure out what they need to do to fix it. It does sound like this is not a bug that has come from PES, or if it is, It existed beforehand in a different sort of version, and now we're just experiencing it a lot more, which of course we are. We're on 100-person servers now. We've got events like Jump Town where you will see people a lot more often when like you're going to encounter this a lot more often. Ghost Hollow is now a PvP zone. This is going to, once again, interact with you a lot more often. So it is possible it's actually not worse. It's just more visible. The invisible bug is more visible to us all now. But I do know that they're saying they're working on it. And it's a very important one for them to get right, because otherwise these dynamic events kind of just become feel-bad moments.
I mean, you can feel it in the player base. Morale took a hit with some of the problems that we've seen this year. And I think that in the long term, it's not such a major deal, because over time, the development has been forming, and these features have been coming together, and obviously server meshing and Squadron 42 are the priority. And like you can feel that CIG is like hands tied to the desk trying to get these things working now, because I don't think they see much other future beyond that. But in the short term, man, it's hurting people. It's making people not want to play the game, and I think that's becoming more and more important as like more casual players are getting into it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things which if you're a completely new player and, you know, in your first session you're killed by an invisible player, oh no, I'm just going to assume that the game just kills me all the time for no reason. I'm not playing this game again, right? Which it does sometimes, but
yeah, like that's how it functions.
The problem. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As a new player, I sometimes can forget how jumping into a game, not just any game either, but like intimidating games. I've jumped into, like, I remember jumping into Civilization for the first time, and compared to myself now, that looked like it looked like I had to learn how to read a new alphabet at times. I was like, where do I even start? Star Citizen's kind of like that. So dying randomly, not a great look.
Yeah, and for us veteran players, like, we're so used to dying randomly that we either have completely, like, we've just figured out how to navigate every bug that does that, or it just doesn't phase us that much, right? But that was a different time, you know, a couple of years ago, because we also got used to 30Ks happening every 35 minutes and calling that a good patch. So, you know, it's a different experience. It's certainly better.
You crash to the desktop. The new player is like, wow, what the heck? What's wrong with this game? You're over here like, man, 1 hour, only one crash? Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a lot of what we know about 320 right now. I'm still hoping that we see a couple of things, maybe not added to release view, but you know how sometimes they'll mention them in Spectrum and like the patch watch stuff, like little quality of life stuff. Anything that you hope might get added, maybe with the roadmap update this week? I'm sure people are listening to this in the future, shaking their heads at us, but what are you hoping for?
Well, there is one thing that is in the patch that I'm actually really excited for, which is the wheeled vehicle handling improvements.
Right.
Another one
that one.
The majority of people probably aren't going to care too much about, but in the racing community and in like the ground-based PvP community, massive fans of what could come from that. Only thing is, we have not seen what it is or how it impacts any vehicle yet since early last year when they first started talking about it. Yeah. And pretty much the only thing we know is that a Cyclone RC won't be able to drive vertical anymore, which is sad. It's very disappointing. We're all sad at the loss of that.
This is very important for my gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. But it sort of, I think, speaks to something which I think will come possibly relatively soon, based on the monthly reports from earlier this year, which is NPCs driving ground vehicles. I don't know if you're aware, but in the patch notes of 3.19, when they introduced the salvage missions, they actually said that if you do the bad boy salvage missions, the ones that have security, there will be either security there or Centurions. And I got really excited at the time. I was like, oh my God, we have enemy NPCs inside Centurions. But that never happened. I've not seen anyone see a single NPC Centurion in there, but it was in the patch notes itself. So they were either really close to putting it in, or there was a typo, I guess. But I think with wheeled vehicle handling improvements, plus the addition of us getting the tank battles in Arena Commander, which now means that, ground vehicles in Arena Commander is around the corner. I think we're going to see some of that soon.
That would be nice. I would love if we just had random NPC convoys going back and forth between settlements, and every once in a while, the game just decides to spawn a mission on them. Like, have them always going, and then if somebody takes some kind of an escort or an attack mission, oh man, that'd be cool. You go and blow it up, you salvage stuff, the security's coming. Like, that's good gameplay, man. That would be really, that's exciting. I hope they add that in 320 or sometime soon after.
Hopefully, or at least just address it. Like, why did you guys say this? I need to know if I'm going to see NPC Centurions. I'm scared now.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so that's a good one. I'm really hoping that they talk about these derelict locations, because we know that they first were planning those for 319, and then that didn't really happen, and then they did say they were coming in 320, but now we haven't heard much about them after that. What do you think's going on with those?
That it definitely feels like the kind of feature that gets added in last minute, because they're just like, hey, we're done. Here you go. Because that's actually kind of what happened previously. So the first time we got the derelict missions with all the ones on Microtech and with Ghost Hollow, obviously, that was a big thing that they were sort of getting people excited about. So they spent a lot of time on that. But when the ones got introduced into 318, which were all of the additional ones on Microtech and Daymar and pretty much everywhere. I feel sure everywhere except for like R-Corp and like Crusader, because you can't put places on them because one's a cloud planet, one's a sea planet. Now has bunkers, right? Or bunkers or settlements. So not bunkers, settlements. That was added pretty last minute, it seemed. So I think, especially because the team that is doing those has been incredibly quick with how fast they've been putting them out, we could actually see that. I would not be surprised.
I'm hoping so, because above all else, like, we look at the consignment missions. We're talking about kind of like cargo-based missions. There are a lot of missions that they're starting to work on, and I just see these derelicts as more locations they can keep spawning more missions at that aren't underground. So I feel like if they have this locations team doing that much good work, then might as well keep getting them into the game.
Yeah, definitely as well. Like they did, right? So they had Ghost Hollow, an amazing location. They then it had some okay missions with it, and then they tacked on the new money for nothing mission.
Oh yeah.
The get UEC mission, and now it's a much more unique place and a much more interesting place. Well, we also have the MSR and the 600i wreck, which is also incredibly interesting, but that's still got those like original missions where it's just kill a couple of guys or grab a box. So I think we will see those more unique, more interesting missions at these locations going forward. I think it's just probably always going to be location first, mission second. So we'll probably see, like we saw on ISC, all of those new locations that they were looking to make. One of them, which I'm really excited for, looks like it was like a drug growery. What's it called? Like a greenhouse, drug greenhouse on Microtech, which is really cool.
Garden. Okay, it's just a calm little, completely legal garden.
It's for my eyesight, guys.
For my grandma. She has back pain.
So I assume we'll get similar sort of missions at those locations because they pumped it out super quick. So
yeah. I look forward to seeing that too. I don't know if it'll be in 320, but maybe they'll at least tell us why not.
Maybe.
All right. Finally, before we move on to CitizenCon, how are you feeling about the game overall coming out of 319, which was definitely an improvement over 318, but still has, I think, been kind of part of this lower level of excitement for the game. And now we're going into 320, which you're saying is feeling like a good patch, but maybe not one that'll hit as hard for a lot of people. How are you feeling about things overall?
I'm mostly pretty happy and mostly pretty excited, but I think a lot of that is coming from hopium from CitizenCon. So yeah, I don't know, it's a bit weird. I feel like while I still really enjoy the game, I feel like right now there's so little incentive to do so many different things in the game at the moment, which kind of sucks, right? We had a period of the game which had less features, but we had a period of the game where we didn't have a wipe for 18 months, which really felt like I was working towards things when I was actually playing the game, and it made it feel a lot better when I was able to actually, you know, buy a ship that I was after. Like, one is I try to go for the 600i every wipe. It's like 10 mil credits, quite a lot in general, that sort of thing. I haven't been able to do that since they announced the 318 wipe. And so it's been like almost a year of sort of just not wanting to progress because it hasn't felt like I'd be able to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. And it's like we had that 18-month period, like you said, and then I think it got updated for 315 when they did the inventory changes. And then we had another 6 months until 317.2 when they had to wipe again. And then we had another 6-7 months until 318 when they wiped again. So we've been going on like 6-month cycles, which, wow, that is better than what we had before. I don't remember what the persistence patch was, but it was in 2020. While it's better than it was back then, because that was every quarter, it's still, like you said, a 6 months block of time. And that's with all of the kind of instability and in unsurety surrounding the situation, it's hard to want to get in for a long-term progression.
Yeah, not only that, but like during that wait for wipe for 318, we were told that there was going to be a wipe so early, and we didn't know when it was coming. We didn't know when the patch was coming. We were originally told that we'd be testing it in like July. Right. So we were sort of always expecting a wipe on the horizon.
Right.
Then 318 comes, it wipes. We sort of have this thing of like, all right, well, maybe it'll be okay. But then 318, because it was PES, just was not a good patch, and people were losing money and all that sort of stuff. And there was tons of bugs. So then we were like, all right, well, there's definitely going to be a wipe in 319. There was mostly a wipe in 319. And then we're now in the same stage again where we're expecting another wipe for 320. It's just, if the wipes happened, I've said this before, if the wipes happened, but they only told me 3 days ahead, I would be so much happier. I know so many people would be super mad, but I personally would be so much happier because, like, I expect that wipes will happen, but I can at least be ignorant of when they're going to happen and just kind of like, oh, I can work towards this. Oh, there's a wipe in 2 days. All right, fine. That's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, I get that. That's it's like it's a mental thing for sure. You think there's going to be a wipe or you think there might be a wipe in 320? I was thinking the next one might be 4.0, but I guess there's like dupe glitches and stuff going on.
Yeah, they mentioned, I believe it was on a Spectrum thread, they mentioned that if they were able to fix the dupe glitches, that it was incredibly likely we'd see a wipe in 320. Not necessarily a complete wipe, but any wipe is obviously a loss of progress, right? So it's incredibly likely that we'll see that.
Okay. Well, let's talk about CitizenCon, because that's the next big thing coming up. 3.20 is an interesting topic, but like we all know that the most exciting part, the thing that they're saving up for, everything that they're going to hold back from us for the next 2 months is going to be CitizenCon. Let's start, though, like we talked about with the fight or flight. You are in Atmo Esports with the shoutcasting. Fight or flight is something that they've announced is going to be live at the convention. Do you think this is like, is this a change from other CitizenCons? I think they've done some gameplay there before, but I don't remember if it was any like planned event.
I have never been to a live CitizenCon, and I started playing after the last live CitizenCon, but my understanding is that this would be the first event of at least this kind. They've definitely had like demos and stuff before, but not really a tournament ever. So that'll be an interesting one, especially because it's a thing that happens in every other convention in gaming. There's always some form of competitive gaming going on at any time, right? Like Blizzard will hold their, competitive arena events at BlizzCon, or in the past they would hold their, their StarCraft events and whatnot at BlizzCon. I don't know if they still do.
God, I miss StarCraft, the original SC.
I did. I went to, on Friday, this is a tangent, but on Friday I went to this Australia-New Zealand Twitch meetup, and they had a $2,000 tab big fan of that.
Nice.
But I met some people that used to stream StarCraft like way back, and people were asking me what I streamed, and I said SC. I'm so used to saying SC, and they're like, "Oh, you're a StarCraft person." It's like, I have not played a single StarCraft game in my life.
The other SC.
Yeah.
How is that? How is the conversation with people about that? Like, were they receptive? Were they interested? Did they just kind of go past it?
I'll tell you what, this time, so this is like the second meetup I've sort of been to of the same kind with like a bunch of other streamers, and none of them stream Star Citizen. This time it was really good. This time it was much better. People were very excited to hear about the game and hear about, my experiences streaming it and stuff. The first time I did it, maybe I was just put on a bad table. The first time I did it, I just got shifty eyes and like, you're a scammer. And I was like, cool guys, big fans. No worries.
Oh, you're the scammer.
Yeah. To be fair, I am, but like, come on, guys, not at the table. All right?
I mean, you wrap it up in good wrapping paper at least. It's a nice scam you're running. Okay, so back to the event. Yeah. What is the overall plan with the fight or flight? Is there a prize? It's going to be 8 people there? It's a 2-day event, though, right?
Yeah, so I have been told the only things I can say are from the from the official announcement. So,
okay, I got you.
As I was sort of mentioning, we've got whoever the top 4 teams are at the online event will be invited into the basically invitational event there, where they'll be paired up with a couple of content creators and stuff, and so they'll be competing together. So it's a lot more of a show. For sure, than it is like a proper hardcore tournament. But it's certainly the start of something, right? Like, this sort of leads the way for this to start becoming a regular thing at every live Star Citizen event, or like every live CitizenCon, but also things like, Beacon. I would not be surprised if they started doing this, or even like large scale bar citizens. I'm not sure if you saw the Chinese bar citizen that had like 1,500 people there. I would not be surprised if if they would start having these kind of live events there. This is why I'm really trying to tell people, guys, like, esports is coming to Star Citizen, and it's something to watch out for, because I don't think there's an experience like it. There's no real proper competitive dogfighting. The games that I have seen that do competitive dogfighting, it's a little bit boring, or it's not as flashy as Star Citizen's able to make it, I guess, because it's just sort of like World War II dogfighting.
And it's also like, once we get the ability for capital ships, and you can be like, okay, we're going to set 5 people or like 10 people up in let's say you're going to set 20 people up in a Javelin, and then we're going to send whatever combination of ships out there, and that's the battle, like a kind of asymmetric capital ship dogfight kind of battle. Like, that would be so cool. Make videos out of it, do the shout casting. That's good marketing for the game, for sure.
Yeah, one thing I really, really want to see in competitive Star Citizen is similar to a thing EVE Online used to do, and it was the original intent of Fight or Flight years ago, before I had anything to do with them. It's basically, like 20v20, but you have multiple sort of scales of ships, right? Like, I want to see, let's say Team Space Tomato, you've got a maximum of 20 people that can be in the tournament, and you have 100 points to spend on your ships. And a Hammerhead might cost 50 points, a Vanguard might cost 20 points, and so on. And so you actually have to build this fleet composition, and then it's fleet v fleet. That's what I really, really love, and I'm really, really excited for, and I think is something that will start coming ahead actually really soon. But it'll require us to get the put people in turrets, whatever that's called, because they said that won't be coming with 320, unfortunately. Right.
It reminds me of Battlefield 2142, when you would have like people would be running in squads and doing their thing, but you have kind of a commander that sits overhead and figures out how the actual army needs to move and be configured. That on the scale of Star Citizen is, oh boy. That sounds like fun.
it adds in these really awesome dynamics as well that you don't get from, once again, other sort of like competitive esports things where it's like you're not just dogfighting. Like you can have someone in I don't remember what the name of the ship is, but it got announced last year at IAE. Sorry, not IAE. It got announced last year at Invictus, which is the I think it was the Aegis ship. It's the one that looks like half a Valkyrie, but it's got a tail.
Oh, the Liberator.
Hacking. No, not the Liberator. No. But you're thinking of the right ship, but it's not called the Liberator.
Oh, gosh. No, the Liberator is the carrier.
Yeah. But the ship that we're thinking of
Legionnaire.
is supposed... Legionnaire.
Thank you, chat.
Yeah, that's supposed to be able to, ram into a ship essentially and board the ship. You open up the front cockpit. Maybe you have to line up and whatever, but that could be a part of this. Is like, yeah, you've got your Hammerhead v Hammerhead, but there's a Legionnaire in there. And if that gets too close, now you've got to deal with a boarding party competitively. So you need to make sure everyone's actually able to be on their toes, FPS-wise. Yeah.
There's also, like, it doesn't have to be combat competitions. Like, there could be straight up mining resource rush kind of things where you have 3 teams of 5 and it's like whoever gets the most minerals and makes the most money wins the prize. Like, setting that kind of thing up in Arena Commander would be really cool too. I hope they go in that direction.
I think it'd be all right. I feel like those kinds of those kinds of ones where it's more of an industrial competition or more of a resource gain competition, I think works better just in the PU in general, because you already have that. You already have the risk of being PvP'd or whatever while you're doing those sorts of things. Obviously, it would benefit a lot from being able to be run in Arena Commander. One thing that I have recently actually really started to enjoy watching is Farming Simulator esports.
They have esports for that?
They do, and it is weirdly super competitive. And so it's really fun watching these people get extremely hyped up over like farming.
He brought out the corn. It's already finished. It's only spring.
Oh my God, you don't even know. So there's this video on YouTube that's got a lot of views, and it's like, the 10 best endings in esports or whatever. And one of them is a farming sim competition where they looks like they're about to draw these 2 teams, but one team decides to go for it and they put a single hay bale into the whatever it is to get points. But if it doesn't make it there in time, they lose the entire match. If they make it, they win. And the casters are getting so excited because all you're doing, because they do the thing, and then all you're doing is watching the conveyor belt, the hay bale just slowly go there. It's like, oh, is it gonna make it? This is crazy. It's so much fun.
Just imagine them playing that Interstellar song in the background. It's just like super intense. That's great, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited to see the esports possibilities with Star Citizen. Fight or Flight coming to the event is really cool. I think it's like they do a great way. They do a great job of building the community and keeping it healthy with things like this. And even though dynamic events aren't hitting off like they used to right now, I think that's also been part of it. It's just like keeping that regular activity both in and outside a game with bar citizens and stuff has always just been so good for this game's health.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. It's very exciting. Mostly though, I'm just excited to go to my first CitizenCon. Haven't been to a live one before, or I've only met people online really. So,
and you are flying.
Just the event in general is going to be good.
You're flying across the world for this. How'd you make the decision? I mean, I know that must have been a lot of back and forth on whether it was worth it.
Yeah, so I had some extra funding from Stream. I had some channel point. I had some donation redemptions and stuff going for the last 7 months, pretty much ever since we knew that it was going to be in October.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of people from the stream helped out, and I would not have been able to make the decision to go without that. So I'm super eternally grateful to all of them. But it sort of just came down to the game itself. Regardless of its current state, the community has changed my life so much that this wasn't really a thing I could miss. And so, I ended up squeezing some coins and stuff wherever I could to make sure I could go, which unfortunately for me, it means I have to get a tattoo. Because I told Stream, in my infinite wisdom, that if I ended up going to CitizenCon, I would have to get a tattoo of a ship manufacturer of their choice.
Never tell chat you're getting a tattoo. Oh boy.
Yeah.
I did that too. I had to get it.
Yeah.
I did validate it. Well, dude, I look forward to seeing you there. It's been a lot of fun watching your content. It's going to be awesome to finally meet all you guys, everybody whose videos and streams I watch in person. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely.
What else are you hoping to see there, though? It's kind of, things are up in the air. Obviously, there's a lot of anticipation for different features and things going on. Are there any particular highlights that you're expecting to be revealed at this two-day event for the first time?
There is, at this stage, no way we don't see something from Squadron, surely, right? It's been so long since we've seen official Squadron material.
I would love to say so.
I think it was 2018. 2018, I think we saw the last proper official work, unless you count last year's, where they did show some Squadron, but it was all within the context of Star Citizen, so it was all like, here is a feature, but it's specifically, like, here's how EVA is going to work in SC.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like there's got to be something. Especially there was also, there was some tweets put out, I think, a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago.
You mean X's?
From a couple. So, yeah, I saw someone call it today excrements. That's what you call them, excrements.
Oh gosh, we're very caught up on our social media drama. Sorry, just.
But yeah, I saw some tweets, and I refuse to call them anything else. A couple of months ago, from a couple of the devs, where they were all, I want to say his name's Brian Blessed, but that's not right. I'm sure that's not right. One of the guys, yeah, it's not Brian Blessed. One of the guys who's actually on Squadron, they all took like a bunch of photos and stuff with him, and posted that up because he had come back in for some more mocap work, which it's been years and years, presumably, at least publicly, since they've been doing the high profile actors doing mocap work. So
John Rhys Davies.
John Rhys Davies, thank you very much. A bunch of photos with him, which is very interesting. It's, within the time frame that they would be getting things ready for CitizenCon. So it could also be in relation to that. But it's also, I think, just a necessity for the game's state regardless, is we just need to know more about Squadron. It has been far too long. We need either current day footage, or we need a trailer, or we need an actual solid release date, or we need a solid demo or something, just anything concrete that we can hook our teeth into, because all we get is monthly reports and that's it. And it's obviously really hard to gauge what's going on over there from the monthly reports, especially when, the vast majority of the Squadron monthly report is a copy paste from the Star Citizen monthly report. So
yeah. And like, especially when it's very clear that most of the effort is going over there, but most of the funding is coming from Star Citizen. It gets harder and harder to explain every year, and I really feel like we're getting to that point where they need to have Squadron ready in some capacity. So you're thinking the big highlight of the year will be some Squadron news?
Almost definitely, because I also don't know what else they could show for Star Citizen that we haven't seen in the last 3 years. Like, they could show more Pyro, which would be cool, but it wouldn't be super hype news like it has been previously.
I was going to ask about that. Do you think they should just straight avoid talking about Pyro because it's just become such a community meme at this point?
I think they should talk about it sort of don't talk about Pyro, talk about the other features, but place them within Pyro, right? So talk about the new bunkers that have so far been looking absolutely amazing, but place them in Pyro 4. We haven't seen Pyro 4 like a flyover, right? So you could do it in there, and that'd be kind of cool. Or you can talk about NPC behaviors, because we know that they've been working on technically dumbing them down, but making them more actually fun to interact with. Mm-hmm. You can talk about NPC behaviors, but once again, do it within Pyro, and just sort of get us used to these locations, so that Pyro ends up becoming more like the cherry on the cake instead of the actual bulk of the announcements. Yeah. With the exception jump points. I almost like the wormholes essentially. I think we're probably going to get a like detailed. This is actually how the jump points work, and actually how you're going to be navigating them, rather than the super concept heavy one that we saw in 2019.
Because we've been hearing about jump points for a while without knowing much about how they work. That's a good point. I would really like them to do a demo that's kind of like, I don't remember when exactly. I think it was either the 2.6 or the 3.0 demo they did, but they basically got like 3 or 4 people. They got out and did like multi-crew mission together in the PU before we had ever seen it. This is like, they went to a comm station and shut it down. They went to a derelict. They did all this stuff. I would love to see a demo like that using, the underground facilities, the outposts, the new AI, vehicle tractor beams, cargo refactor stuff, like bring in all those features you've been talking about. And if they're not ready, if they're not going to be ready in the next few patches, then leave it out. But like, show us what it's going to look like to play in 4.0 with the actual finished assets in an actual running online environment. I think that would really help people get some confidence back about the viability of not just 4.0, but also the gameplay maybe having a change when that comes by.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do you one better. I think what we'll probably get is not just that, but if we don't get a playable squadron, as in like the CitizenCon goers can play playable squadron demo at CitizenCon, that we will almost definitely get a Pyro demo with probably a new mission, probably a ruin station at the event. I think we know how far along Star Citizen is. We know, like, theoretically, it should be pretty easy to make a closed system demo like that using those assets. And even if they were super buggy, I don't think Star Citizens would necessarily care. They'd just be excited to play on Pyro. Yeah.
I do hope that we see something like that. A demo would be really cool. I think they might have done that actually at 1.2, like in the physical CitizenCons where they let people come and play a little bit possibly, of the gameplay. Yeah, beforehand.
Yeah.
Let's see.
The biggest thing is it's going to be very hard for CIG to actually disappoint me, because I'm mostly just excited to see the community, right?
Yeah.
So pretty much regardless of what they show, I'm going to be happy, but it'd be nice if we got some cool things.
Well, yeah. So like there's 2 different angles. There's the angle of actually going to CitizenCon, and I think nobody should be going to CitizenCon for information, since you can get it all online. Like, you're going there to enjoy the community, to get more involved in something that is a big part of what you do. Like, a lot of our friends play Star Citizen. We hang out in Discord. We go and play other games. Many of the people I know go and meet up in real life. So like, this is a good chance for people to just hang out. But then the other side of things is like looking for information, looking to get news. A lot of people use this as their only update on Star Citizen in the whole year. So it's important in both aspects. I would say I'm not going to be as easily impressed this year, because I think they did a good job last year with kind of keeping the focus off of Pyro, but I want them to show me more than just the new system now. I want them to give us a better idea of how the game actually plays. The economy, like, would be really nice to get a better idea of how the game works with the actual economy they're working on. What are
I think
No, go ahead.
I think one of the biggest takeaways, so the 3 CitizenCons we've had since I've joined the game, so 2019, which was the last live CitizenCon, almost everything that was in the like big presentation made it into Star Citizen within about 9 months. With the exception of jump points, which once again were super concept heavy. And Pyro, people say Pyro was shown in 2019. It wasn't. We saw a cloud. That was it. We basically went through the jump point and saw a cloud.
Yeah.
But pretty much everything else that was in that presentation came out within 9 months, with some small exceptions of hacking. And there was one small other thing. But we got the weather, we got the Carrack, we got Microtech and New Babbage. We did get fabric physics. It's just not something that we can physically pull ourselves.
Yeah.
A couple of other things as well. 2021 and 2022 were a bit of a weird exception because, well, in 2021, the focus was so heavy on Pyro. Of course, we didn't get Pyro. What we did get, though, was we got the 400i, we got the clouds, we got the derelict settlements, we got the rare items to find.
Yeah, some of the stuff they showed there was stuff that was in the next patch. Like, it was basically in the game. The inventory, the looting, the backpack system, like a lot of that stuff, while not that big, was definitely being shown off there and then included in the game.
Yeah, exactly. So in my opinion, that's also, they delivered a lot of the stuff that they were showing from the thing. They didn't deliver Pyro, which is a big deal, but that's a different thing. But then last year, they didn't have the major presentation, and all of the stuff that they were showing was either really concept heavy or was specifically, this is how we game dev, which is cool presentations. I really like watching that. But it's very different to the previous CitizenCons. What I think we're going to see this year is probably a return to that style where it is, here's our big presentation, here's all the features coming out. Last year they dropped on us master modes that kind of came out of nowhere. They sort of dropped on us the engineering that they were showing and how that worked. That also sort of came out of nowhere. We knew that there was like hints of the things being told, but we hadn't really seen anything from that. So I think they can probably just drop some stuff this year that we haven't even thought of, and then it'll probably come out within 9 to 18 months. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I think CitizenCon had lots of issues in the early days of them promising things that didn't come out for 10 years, but I don't think that's an issue anymore necessarily.
I agree. I think they've gotten a lot better at like showing us relevant stuff. And I also agree about last year. I think that CitizenCon should just always have something that has to do with every pillar, whether it be combat, economy, server meshing, the graphics department. Like, they should all have a major update to give at that event that lets people know kind of where things are coming from and where they're going. I hope we see more of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a given. But once again, the big thing is, if we don't see Squadron stuff, it's going to be a really bad look for the event, I think, overall, because everyone's expecting it.
Yeah. And what do you think they would be saying if it was Squadron stuff? Release next year? You think they would give a date?
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that aggressive.
Okay.
My most, like, it might happen, but my most sort of, the thing that I think is most likely is that we'll just see an actual, almost finished product, like a practically polished, proper demo. That's what I think we'll see.
I hope we do. I hope we do. The other thing that comes with CitizenCon every year is kind of an info drought of sorts. It's like we kind of get info, but then at the same time, not so much. Like, I'd say probably August and September, it really feels like they start to quiet up and not give us as much because they're holding up for CitizenCon. Do you think it'll be just the same thing this year, especially with this new patch coming out?
Yeah, almost definitely. But that's the thing, right? They can keep talking about all the 320 things. One of the big things about August and September is that we tend to see, at least in the last couple of years, we tend to see a lot of dynamic events, so they can talk about that. We see things like the Ship Showdown, which gets the community really hyped. There's no lack of things for CIG necessarily to keep everyone entertained. But yeah, we won't hear much about post 320 things, I don't think.
God, I really would like to hear more about bounty. I mean, there are a few different things that were stated in the letter from the chairman at the beginning of the year that I guess I just expected to hear more about at the beginning, or rather than throughout the first half of this year. So like bounty hunting, I guess we did get an update on engineering, but like hacking, AI updates, player traversal, we heard about them, but we haven't had much of a commitment on like what's going on with them or where they're coming from. Do you think any of that sort of stuff would, I guess that would be shown at CitizenCon, right?
Yeah, I would assume that'd get showed, and obviously we're not getting any of that sort of stuff in 320, right? So,
Yeah.
but like as your example, right, the Bounty Hunter version 2, which we know they've been working on forever, that could be that large feature in 321 that I was sort of talking about, right? Where there's probably going to be something there that's really entertaining for everyone, but other than that, it's going to be a small patch.
Mm-hmm.
I think that exact feature could be one of those things. So, for the most part, with the letters from the chairman, I don't really read them. Chris seems to be the most optimistic person working at CIG, which is fine. That's cool. But like, I didn't back because of Chris. I know he's made some great games, but I didn't back because of him. I backed because the game looked sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of the other devs that are front presenting, like Jared, even to an extent, the community team with Jake and Galaxica and whatnot, I think they have a much better way of communicating with us and telling us what's actually going to come out. So I usually just pay attention to that.
That's fair. That's fair. Sometimes I get swept up in the optimism. I'm still hoping that the stuff he talked about does show up this year, at least in some small capacity. But I've kind of reconsidered my my outlook based on that stuff. I still have to do like a reply video to my video from last summer that was saying that 4.0 would be out this summer. Gotta eat those words.
Hey, look, 4.0 has been coming out at the end of the year for the last 3 years. So
yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, man. I've been on this road, and
Yep.
long road. It's a old town road, and it just keeps going. Okay, so in the meantime, during the next couple of months, as we approach CitizenCon, obviously 3.20 comes out. That gives you plenty to do. But I think there's also some other options that are showing themselves a little bit. You got any other games that you're planning on hitting up over the rest of the year until CitizenCon, or even past then?
Yeah, we were talking a little bit earlier, about, in Discord chat about how insane this year is for game releases in general.
Yeah.
So, Baldur's Gate 3 comes out in like a week, a little over a week, which I'm incredibly excited for. Very, very excited for that. I love Dungeons and Dragons in all its forms, and Baldur's Gate 3, even just the early access Baldur's Gate 3, is one of my all-time favorite games already. It's just that much fun. So very excited to play that. And I'm also really excited that they pushed the release date for that earlier. Like they're releasing it a month earlier than they were originally, because it was going to come out like 4 days before Starfield.
I've heard
yeah.
Baldur's Gate 2 was pretty celebrated, right? But was it a surprise that it was so good, or was it expected to be? Because I feel like I heard an interesting story about it.
I don't know. I think I was like 8 years old. When does Baldur's Gate 2 come out?
Holy crap.
2000. I was 6 years old.
Oh, I didn't know it was that old.
Yeah, so it's been a while. The team behind Baldur's Gate 3, though, they did Divinity Original Sin, which is the same concept of the game. It plays pretty much the same. And they crushed it. That game absolutely popped off. Everyone really loved it. So when they found out, hey, this team's doing Baldur's Gate 3, it immediately was just like, all right, this will be like Game of the Year contender. And it's looking like it very much will be.
Really?
It's got a lot of competition. For example, the next game, which is Starfield, right? It's kind of hard to not be excited for Starfield. It's a new space RPG that we get to play. I haven't played a like proper space RPG, like solo space RPG, since I think Mass Effect.
Yeah.
I think that was the last one that really hooked me and stuff. So like, super exciting. I'm really, really keen for that.
Yeah, that is a story. I mean,
yeah,
the space genre overall is a really interesting space of gaming. Like, so many people like sci-fi stuff, but the genre is so small, and it's considered niche. And you look at like the dominating fantasy game, which I think right now we're generally talking about like single player sort of RPG focused experiences. That's dominated by fantasy. Elden Ring, Legend of Zelda, like Witcher, Skyrim, Elder Scrolls, like you can name so many off the top of your head that just dominate headlines. So it's really cool to see a sci-fi game coming and doing that again, especially from a company like Bethesda. Have you played their games before?
Yeah, so I've played a lot of Skyrim, like a ton of Skyrim when it came out. I played a little bit of Fallout, but it just sort of just became an issue that I didn't have like a PlayStation. So I just like couldn't play Fallout 4 when it came out. I think it was locked or whatever, and then I just never played the PC ports or anything like that. But yeah, I've really enjoyed their stuff that I have played. I've heard all the issues with Fallout 76, and it doesn't bother me too much because my understanding is while it's the same company, it's a different studio.
Right.
And it would be like you know, people are saying, well, like, you know, you can't trust Starfield because of Fallout 76. It would be an incredibly bad thing, and Bethesda know that, if Starfield came out as buggy as 76 did. So it won't. It just will not. It may come out buggy, but there's no way they would let it. They would, I guarantee you, if they found a breaking bug today that just ruined it for everyone, they will push it back again. I almost guarantee you. That's not going to happen most likely, but you know.
The level of importance in this game's launch, it's understated. Like, despite how hyped this game is right now, the hype is all for the excitement around the game. But like, if you look at what's been going on, especially considering Microsoft's acquisition fight of Activision over the last year now, the fact that they spent this money on Bethesda, the fact that Halo Infinite basically killed their golden boy console seller, you start to realize how important this game is, because like none of their other games have really popped off that hard in the last couple of years. This is like, it's looking more and more important every week, and I'm in agreement. Like if they have a bad launch, it's not going to be good for either company for a long time. This feels like Mass Effect in 2006. Feels like the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, like if it, imagine if it did flop, you know, tons of people are getting their refunds in or whatnot. Their next most hyped game, Elder Scrolls 6, would probably just cease development at that stage. So, they have a lot riding on this, and I don't think that they are dumb enough to make those same mistakes that they may have made with 76.
I'm sure there will be some mistakes made.
Oh, I'm sure.
I will. Yeah, I will say that. But like, again, just going back to the fact that it's a sci-fi game in this genre of the AAA RPG caliber, it's hard to understate how much people have been waiting for a game like this since Mass Effect, since Andromeda did not produce, since Outer Worlds ended up being kind of a smaller scale than people were looking for. And then you throw in the things like their quest system. You know, Bethesda's great at character development. They've got the Radiant AI system. Like, they build unique experiences. And putting that in space is like, gets me going, man.
Yeah, 100%. The only thing that I'm sort of iffy on, just because we can't experience it until we really play it, is the combat, because it's very different to Fallout, very different to Elder Scrolls, the way that they're doing this combat. I'm sure it'll be fun. The customization around the guns and everything seems like a lot of fun, and I like how they've added in, you know, some fantasy, some like sci-fi-esque type guns that they've got with like the ones that shoot like 1 billion bullets a second or whatever. But yeah, it looks like it could be a little janky, but I'm sure it's fine. I'm not super concerned.
Yeah. Well, there's always going to be something wrong. It's hard to launch a game now without it having some problems, and I just hope that it's decent. I think, you know, a decent launch, definitely not like we've seen with some other higher profile games like Cyberpunk and stuff like that, but something that comes out and just gets the experience across, and there's no game breaking bugs, and it's fairly smooth. I think that'll be pretty good for them. I think they'll continue with the sequel, and in 15 years and we'll get to enjoy a new storyline. But Cyberpunk is oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead, because it's a topic.
Okay.
So go
I was going to say, Cyberpunk is another one that's actually coming back kind of into the spotlight of interest for folks, myself included. Not a huge fan of the base game. I'm trying to get back into it, but like what they are doing with this new DLC, I believe it's called Liberty City, sounds pretty good. Are you interested in that one?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the base game, which I only played about 6 months after release. So a lot of the bad bugs that had existed prior had been fixed at that stage. So I didn't have to experience that, which I always feel good about. Just buy games 6 months later, guys. That's the solution. So yeah, I've really enjoyed Cyberpunk as is. I've done a couple of playthroughs because there is enough sort of customization there, and there is enough actual like relevant decision trees and whatnot to give you that little bit of replay. That like a DLC was always going to get excited for me. Yeah, Phantom Liberty.
Oh, what did I
So
call
yeah,
it?
very excited for that.
Oh, why did I put Liberty? Yeah, Phantom
That's the
Liberty.
Grand Theft Auto place.
Yeah, I've made that
Jeez.
mistake 3 times in the last week now because I said that to my wife and she loves Grand Theft Auto. She's like, "Wait, what? Are they making a new?" It's like, "Wait, no, I'm sorry." Yeah, Phantom Liberty. So you've been enjoying the game a lot. Is this getting you back into it, or you've been playing it the whole time?
I probably haven't played it for like 6-9 months, something like that. But once the DLC comes out, I'll start up probably a full new character and just play the whole thing again plus the DLC. Like new content in a game you already enjoy is always going to be good fun, even if the it's not super impactful. It's still new story.
Yeah.
And for games like that, that's the most important element, right?
Yeah. That's what honestly the most exciting thing for me is like I didn't like the way they set up the game as kind of more action adventure than RPG. And I also really enjoy sort of the political intrigue of cyberpunk stories. Like I'm definitely more a fan of Deus Ex. So it sounds like they're going more in that direction for this DLC. And they've also said that it's adding some of the things that make it feel a little bit more like what they wanted it to be at launch. So I am looking forward to getting dragged back into it and actually liking it. I will say, so have you played the tabletop Cyberpunk at all, ever? I've watched it. I haven't played it myself.
Okay. So yeah, I've played it, like I'm big into tabletop RPGs. So yeah, we played it before Cyberpunk came out because we were like, oh, well, we gotta see what it's about. It's this super famous one from the 80s. And the tabletop RPG was really enjoyable. And there were a lot of elements that did feel like they could have been added in from the tabletop that weren't. And so it felt like a different experience when it shouldn't, which is that's sort of why I like Baldur's Gate. It feels like I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Cyberpunk 2077, obviously it's a completely different game, but it didn't feel like I was playing a super big RPG. I still enjoyed it, but it wasn't as it didn't feel like I had a role, I guess. That's the whole thing. It didn't really feel like I had a role.
It felt like you were playing one person's version, like one tabletop set that they made the rules and set the story and you just played through it, which, it was kind of a bummer. I was blown away by the fact that like there was no cyber psychosis mechanic where like if you added too much cybernetics, you started to have trouble with the gameplay. Like, it just felt
which
like
is a thing that happens in the tabletop,
right? Those are the kind of things that really just rubbed me the wrong way and made me really just want to see a new Deus Ex now.
Yeah, look, fair enough. I just want a copy of one of the Deus Exes. I've never played any of them before, so I'm actually really excited to play it. I don't remember what name it was. I know Sandig in chat knows the name, so I'll probably look out for that. But I'm actually really excited to play it.
Oh, the first one's very good, and the two most previous recent ones, they're pretty good. They're not quite the same immersive sim level, but like the music is great, the atmosphere is great, characters are solid, so it's fun. Man, that sequel though, wish it had a better ending. But yeah, there are a lot of good things to be playing towards the end of this year. I mean, we didn't touch on a lot of them, I think, but like those are the 3 that I'm really interested in. Are there any other ones that you were looking at?
Yeah, so what I was going to say earlier is one of the big things that I'm just playing a ton of right now is just Magic the Gathering. I don't think I've played this much Magic in my life, and I used to play at like weekly tournaments and stuff in paper Magic because it's been good to play. It's one of those games as well where it's like I can still go into Star Citizen like right now and do like some cargo hauling and play a game of Magic the Gathering on the side while I'm like in Quantum or whatever. So I've just been playing a lot of that. There's something. Feels good to play ranked games again, essentially.
Yeah, that is nice. My ranked game was Halo Infinite, which, as I mentioned in this show, I don't talk about that too much. I think actually that release has disappointed me more than Cyberpunk at this point. Because at least Cyberpunk, it feels like they're doing more and more to bring it back, and it'll never reach the level that they kind of said it was going to be. But Halo Infinite, man, that's been rough. They didn't even try DLC for the story. Just
I stopped after
devastating.
ODST. ODST
Really?
was my last Halo. Yeah.
That was a good one. Great story.
Yeah, no, it was. I just never played any of the other ones afterwards.
That's fair. Have you heard of Falling Frontier?
I have not, no.
No, okay. That was one. I don't know if it's coming out this year. I think they might have pushed it back till next year, but it's a smaller developer under Hooded Horse, and a space-based RTS. Similar in vein to Homeworld in that it's kind of more cinematic and crunchy sci-fi feels, but like this one is very cool. I would check it out if you're into strategy games. It's got kind of the vibes of The Expanse on the scale of maybe like Battlestar Galactica. So you got warships going at it, you got escape pods coming out, there's radio chatter in your ears, and like you're using area control. Projectile speeds and everything are countered. It's a really cool game, but that's another one that I think I would be trying to play right now. I don't know. We're just going through a list of.
Have you played BattleBit at all?
No, I haven't.
Oh man,
interestingly, Battlefield was one of my most played games as a kid. So BattleBit sounds like it would be something that would interest me, but I haven't gotten around to trying it yet.
It's like 400 megabytes. It's so small. It really is just Roblox Battlefield. But it's a lot of fun. It's just like, it's one of those cheap, fun games. Just like hop in for a couple of games and you're done sort of thing. You don't have to worry too much. One of the cool things is that like if anyone is taking the game too seriously, everyone else in the server just sort of like jokes on them for taking Minecraft Battlefield seriously.
Well, it looks cool. It looks like the gameplay is really cool. So good on them for getting that done and getting in the game.
Yeah.
But that about wraps it up today, Croncy. We went much longer than I planned on, and we've got a little bit of a Q&A to go through here right afterward. But thank you so much for joining me, man. Before we sign off, can you let the folks know where they might find your content?
Yeah, so you can find me at twitch.tv/Croncy. You can find me at youtube.com/c/Croncy. Or you can find me at X. Twitter.com/Croncy1 or at Croncy1.
Yeah. Find me at X.
Yeah.
X at me. Okay. Yeah. So that's nonsense. But thank you for joining me again today, man. Thanks everybody for coming live. This is always fun to do with you guys. We will be heading out for a couple of minutes here, just getting reset for a little Q&A. You guys have asked questions on the links pinned in chat. We will answer your hardest hitting questions in a minute. Until then, folks, thanks for being here, and we will be right back. Catch you in a second. All right, folks, welcome back. We are back. For those who maybe don't know what I'm talking about, we just finished a podcast. It'll be posted on the same channel, but if you are interested, we will also be now going over some other stuff, little questions. We collected some questions during the podcast, got a little Q&A here with my friend Croncy. We're going to answer the hard-hitting ones. And to start us out, I do see something in the chat that I wanted to talk about for a second. Somebody said that talking about being tired switches them off from the channel. I want folks to know, when we talk about maybe taking a break from the game, or being tired with the progress of the game, or even being super excited about the game, that's not necessarily us telling you guys you also have to feel the same. We are mainly looking at this game like, part of what you try to do in this position is look at the game from as many different angles as possible. We always use our own opinion when, we want to, but I'm also trying to talk to 100% of the player base. So that includes people who are super pumped, super hyped, very excited, people who are not having the best time and maybe are looking for answers on what they should do with their free time. It's not necessarily a change in the content of the channel. It's not a focus on a certain type of content. We will have all different kinds of messages coming out. So I just would like to be clear with folks that it's not, don't focus too much on a single statement like that or anything. But anyways, let's get into questions.
I also think just on that as well, I think it's also relevant to remember that, like, Tomato and I play this game a lot more than most people do, because we try to make content for it. So a lot of our opinions on like our tiredness and stuff are going to be a bit exasperated.
That is true. Yeah, that's when you get tired of Star Citizen, you might put it down. When I get tired of it, I go and write more about it. It is an everyday kind of thing, which is the choice that we made. Love the game. Honestly, it's part of the best part of my day. It's just getting to follow what's going on with it.
Yeah.
But let's get into the questions. We got quite a few. Here's our first about 3.20. What are the hidden features that may come to 3.20 or later this year that CIG have not put on the release view that may surprise us, if there is any, or will it be just what we currently see? We kind of went over this, so just going over some of the stuff we touched on.
So I think, bounty hunting is probably bound to come up again soon, whether it's going to be actually put into a patch or not. Like exactly what you said, they've been talking about it for a while, and it's been popping up in the monthly reports and stuff. I don't think it's going to come 320, but I think they'll probably talk about it pretty soon. The derelict settlements will come at any time, and will probably surprise us regardless, because we know they're working on them. But it's just going to be a case of, hey, is it released? Cool, here it is. And then probably some ships. There'll be some surprise ships, I almost guarantee you, because the monthly reports, once again, there's finished ships like every second month. We don't get a new ship every second month, so there'll be some vehicles coming in probably.
Do you think, because they talked about two different things they showed from the Squadron 42 development last year, we talked about EVA, T2, and the platforming improvements. You think we might see either of those two things kind of slip into 320 after being mentioned in recent monthly reports?
Probably not.
No.
It's hard to tell, but once again, I think 320 is too close. Like they've already committed the majority of the things in the pipeline. So yeah, probably not. I don't think we're going to see much of a surprise in anything 320, but 321 may end up having significantly more than you would think.
Something has to. Like I thought 320 might be the big patch this year, but it seems maybe 321 will be. But they're gonna have a patch that's fairly significant. That's not 318, I think. So I agree with you.
Most likely, or we will just have an absolutely insane 4.0, which is a possibility. God. It's a possibility, right? Because the big thing that I think is relevant in 4.0 is that it's mostly like, so the server meshing is obviously the big thing. Other than that, it's just locations. How many bugs have we seen, like game-breaking bugs have we seen with locations? There's been a few, but it's few and far between. Like Crusader rocked up and it didn't completely break the game. Microtech rocked up, it didn't completely break the game. It's just places.
Yeah.
So like whatever else gets tagged onto that patch could be the actual like player facing features. And so we could just see this absolute monster patch theoretically.
Well, it seems like maybe they want to make a bigger splash with it than 3.0 was. But geez, there's a lot of things being worked on that, like all of that in one patch, or maybe the patches that come a little bit after it. That's a lot. I'm not gonna say next year will be a big year for development because of that. I'm done with that. but it could be. We'll say that. As always, it could be.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think that the Fury Racer is just another try to milk a subset of the community, especially as in AC, your bot ships in the PU don't count, and you need to buy it with real money in order to use it in AC? I don't think that's true. You can buy ships with REC, right?
Yes, but I don't believe they go up for sale immediately.
Right.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
But also the answer is every ship is a way for them to milk consumers. That's their funding model. Like literally though, right? That's their funding model, of course.
It is. Yeah.
It's I think one big thing that comes up a lot in a similar vein is anytime we get like a combat ship, everyone's like, oh, they're going to make this combat ship super, super overpowered so that everyone only wants to use this. When really that's only happened like twice, right? Like it's where we've had a ship come out and just be super, super overpowered. And then it's been nerfed, not to the point of being... The Ares is an exception, but not to the point of absolute garbage. Yeah. They nerf them to a point where they're just like, fine. Like people were saying it about the Corsair when it came out. People were like, this is so overpowered. It's got so much ballistics. It's going to kill everything. And they didn't change anything and it didn't break the game and nothing like that happened. The same thing is going to happen with the racing ship here. I think one important thing to remember with the racing community is we make our own rules. So if we think a ship is too busted and we don't want that to be, used in certain events, then we'll just ban it. And everyone's fine with that. Like it's a non-issue, essentially.
Coming at that from, I guess, a more pessimistic feeling, do you think that it is unnecessary for them to bring in that ship? Like they're doing too much, trying to read into the question a little bit more. Like they're doing too much to try and cater to racers with the perfect thing that they might want just to get them to buy in.
I think so if you look at every profession in the game and how many ships are dedicated to that profession, obviously combat, there's a ton. It's a combat game, of course there's going to be. Yeah. Cargo has quite a few ships. Then you have things like mining and salvage, which have one ship each. Racing is actually in a very similar state. There's only really 2 or 3 ships, and they're all of different weight classes that are actual like racing ships that are in the game. So having another one that, should theoretically have enough different with it for you to actually decide whether you want to use that over a Razor or possibly an Archimedes, it should be somewhere in that range. Should be fine. Like there's 3 racing ships now. But with that, theoretically, there's 3 racing ships of that size. I think that's fine.
Okay. I'll be interested in seeing how that turns out. I was really hoping that we'd see like a industrial version of it. I think it'd be so cool to have like a Fury that you could have in the back of your ship that has like tractor beams or mining lasers or something on it, that just a little helper that you can pop out, no quantum drive, get the job done, take it home.
I mean, we still could. We still could, right? Like they only released it in released it in 3.19.
Yeah.
And now there's another one coming out. There's no reason why we couldn't see another. Yeah.
And honestly, if we did see another one, people would definitely start calling more of like, okay, you guys stop making more of the same shit, please. So yeah, I think it'll probably be done for a little while, but I do hope that this means that they're willing to do more small ships like that they could just do them for different kinds of stuff. Next question here is, will we see Space Tomato get into community races and when? I guess that's kind of for me. I've done the Daymar Rally once or twice, but usually I like to cover the races more than participate in them. I think my problem with events, not gonna lie, this probably sounds like a dumb reason to have a problem. I have trouble sitting in one of these chairs for like more than 2 hours playing games. It's not comfortable. I'm a console player. I grew up on couches and like laying on the floor in weird positions while my feet were up on the wall and I was playing games. So like sitting in a computer chair at a desk for 3 hours has taken some getting used to. So I think as the game gets more stable and I get more used to the comfort of sitting here, I'll get into those things more. But for now, I like to cover them. I like making videos about the events.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah,
You shoutcast, but do you race?
Yeah, I race. That's sort of how I got started with it. I was doing lots of ground racing, and I joined the Stanton 7, but formerly Stanton 7, now the System 7, 2 years in a row, and I qualified both times. So, like that's how I got into that, was ground racing primarily, and then I've done a lot of ship racing since, because it's obviously there's ship racing in the game now. Mm-hmm. But I think sort of like on that sort of complaint, Tomato, is like you will now have Arena Commander. You won't have to sit down for 2 hours to get a bunch of racing practice.
Very true.
Right? You'll just be able to hop into a Yadar Valley, and I mean in 2 hours you should be able to get like 100 laps done theoretically, right? So
okay.
Yeah, that's sort of what in the main episode I was talking about. It's going to make hyper competitive Star Citizen playing, whether that's PvP or racing, much more accessible to everyone.
I am the proof. Yeah, nice. Okay. Well, that's solid news. Maybe I'll be starting to do more community events. Let's see. Next question comes from DJ Catmom, a event manager here on our GII Discord server. Croncy, is there any animosity in pro racing community towards CIG for basically reinventing the player-made track into something official? Do you believe CIG needs to continue this or focus on creating their own tracks from scratch and leave the player-created wild tracks alone?
I don't think I've heard a single racer say it was a bad thing. Everyone's hyped for this. It's super, super exciting. Like, like people will still create their own tracks in the PU. People have been doing it recently. EchoBit, who's in the Twitch chat at the moment, the head of ANZI Alliance, who does the Crux Cup and stuff. They've been creating a bunch of tracks around the new Lawville, right? It's 100% going to be a thing. But there's no animosity at all. The fact that we have Arena Commander now is super, super beneficial for just everyone. I think the only people who are sort of a little mad are the ground racers, because there's no ground racers in Arena Commander yet. But we know that that's a thing they're looking at. So
that'd be really cool if they had ground races on green while people were racing up in the city in the sky up above. Oh, that'd be sick.
That'd be super cool. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Do you think that the engine/GFX/VFX teams ostensibly polishing tech for Squadron 42 is at least an indication towards Squadron 42 could be going into beta during CitizenCon? So, like, do you think recent news points towards Squadron going into beta during CitizenCon?
I don't know if it's beta that soon, but it obviously points towards work being completed, right? Not just that it's happening, but it's actually they're starting to finish a lot of really important tasks. The biggest thing is, though, that like you need a lot more than just like the engine team done in order to have a successful beta build. So, but it's a lot of stuff that we don't know about. So mostly just, I think it's likely we'll see some polished stuff soon. Whether it's playable or not is a different story.
Okay. Let's see. Do you like Croncy as a guest? We certainly do. I mean, let me put it this way. I'm pretty sure we just recorded the longest episode of the launch sequence I've ever done. So let that be your answer. It's great talks every time. I think, Croncy, you've been on here 3 times now? 2 or 3 times?
I think this is my 3rd, and then I've also been on the
Citizen Central.
Citizen Central.
Yeah. So like
twice, I think I've been on Citizen Central twice.
So yeah, I like having Croncy around. Good talks, and like, how can dude? The beard is just like permanent entertainment. Just watching the beard during the podcast, I just sit here and man, this is me. This is what I get. So I'm always, I love having Croncy on here. It's just hard with the times, but You make the time zones work pretty well.
One thing that's been weirdly humbling, not humbling. One thing that's been like weirdly cool the last like week is even people who have disagreed with my like YouTube video and stuff have been saying like, man, this is an actual garbage take, but you're a cool dude. I like you. I was like, okay, I'll take it. You got it, buddy.
Oh man, like, oh dude, don't take this personally, but I really hate your content. But you sound great. You sound like you'd be a good friend. I'd love to have a beer with you. And it's like, well, all right then. YouTube comments, man, they just build you up. No, actually, there's a lot of kind people in YouTube comments. They just don't get the drama. All right, next question. Will each ship have a different SCM? They're asking interceptors, fighters, bombers. That was the end of it. Sorry, I made it sound like there was more to come. That was
yeah, it sounds like they're supposed to. They just, once again, it's not a mechanic that they've talked a ton about, but obviously we're going to get to experience it a lot with 320 and being able to check out master modes. Based on how they've talked about it, my assumption is that ships like interceptors will have a much higher SCM because that's their whole deal, is being able to catch up to people, versus like a trading ship, which is probably going to have a pretty low SCM. But we don't know that until they actually give us definitive numbers.
Yeah.
The only thing we know is that it's slower. Everyone's SCM has come down.
Really, they've slowed down SCM across the board. Oh, well, I guess
like everyone's top speed has come down.
Yeah. Yeah, I assume it's just like how it is now. Some ships can fly regular combat at 300 meters per second. Some can only do 150. Like, I'm guessing the SCM level will be different for each ship. It'll be different based on the type of ship, and I'm really hoping it'll be different based on components. But the only thing they've really said will be affected by components is that sort of transitionary period between SCM and nav mode. So we don't know how different they may be, but I think we can all expect that there will be differences in SCM speeds between ship class.
Yeah, this is as impactful for ship maneuverability as actual like ship combat was in 314 when we had the capacitor changes and stuff. So almost everything changes. Balance completely changes. The way that they can balance things completely changes. But once again, you can sort of always kind of guess how they're going to go about it. Like exactly like you said, components will probably affect things like SCM speed. Like I can assume that something like a cooler may allow you to, overdrive. No, that's not overload your like engines a bit more or something like that. But yeah, we're yet to see it, and it's going to require a ton of balance. I actually think we will not see completed master modes in the game for a couple of years. Yeah. And it's going to be kind of like a mainstay in Arena Commander, where they're just always testing out new ships and new ways of using it.
It's going to be years. This is like this in engineering. I'm starting to feel more and more like 4 or 5 years until majority of ships are running correctly on them. And even then we enter beta, and then there's all the balancing that has to go through with this. This is like one of the inherent problems with Star Citizen is they need the devs to make these game systems, but in order to make the game systems, they had to fund the devs for 5 years. And in order to do that, they had to sell the ships. Selling the ships didn't have the features, so now they have to update the same ships they sold to give the features that they paid for. It's like, it's a crazy situation Star Citizen is in. And I think things like master modes and engineering really put it out there in the open.
Yeah, I will say, at least with engineering, it seems like the gameplay that we will be getting from engineering is like this was always intended, whereas master modes is a new idea. They had a combat system they had previously that they did do a lot of balancing on, and they changed a lot of things around, and then they said, we don't like this, so now we're getting master modes. And I do think master modes is an inherently better system. We haven't played it yet, but it sounds like a much better system. But that is like that is not wasted time, but like if that decision had been made 6 years ago, we'd be having a much different conversation.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of those kinds of moments in Star Citizen too.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. 3.20 will have the new EVA. And will the multi-tool need to be charged and lose battery power? So both of those for 3.20 again. New EVA and charge and batteries in the multi-tool. Do you think they'll be there?
I don't think either of those things will be in 320. The EVA, once again, I think actually might be a thing that they just present in CitizenCon as part of their big display, whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
The recharging for multi-tool, I don't think we're going to see that for quite a long time, because it's just a punishing mechanic essentially for right now. Like if they just put it in the game right now, it would just make things more annoying. And so there's no, you need to try to not make the game worse when it's already unstable. And that's one of the systems that would do that, right? So yeah, I don't think we'll see that for a while.
Yeah, I think charge and drain is one of those things that's being maybe worked on in the background, but they're not talking about it very much. And it's on the progress tracker, but we're not hearing much from it. It's going to be important though, in terms of like the power stuff and engineering. So maybe we see something about charge and drain at CitizenCon. You think?
Possibly. I feel like they could probably tie it in with engineering, which we're almost definitely going to see stuff about, because there's just been teams dedicated on working in engineering for the past 2 years doing like nothing else. So, yeah, but yeah, not right now though.
Okay. Let's see. Hangers, somebody said. Clothing hangers too. It's not ship hangers, my friend. How big do you think they are? And could you have all your ships in one hangar, or one hangar per ship?
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do it. It's a very interesting question, right? Because so the only thing we have seen is a sneak peek of the freight elevators, and that's it, which also has technically not been confirmed and probably at this stage won't be coming in 320.
Right.
And that's sort of the only element of hangars we've seen. I would assume though that you still have to spawn your ships into the hangar like one at a time, maybe two at a time or something, depending on the size of hangar you get. I don't know. We're talking like years in the future again, so I just don't know.
Yeah, hangars are a weird topic. They've come up and been pushed back multiple times, particularly persistent and personal hangars. And while I think obviously we have to get persistent hangars for those freight elevators to work, but custom hangars in the way that the question kind of implies, that there'll be different size hangars and stuff, and we'll have more ownership over how they're organized. I don't know if that's coming soon either. But that is, again, one of those things that's just like, I don't know where they are with that stuff. They have so many plans that have to do with that. And when you look at things like building interiors and UGFs and persistent hangars, a lot of signs point to it being a thing, but they don't talk about it much.
Yeah, I think the reason they don't talk about it much is because it keeps getting pushed back, right? There's a couple of features like that where they kind of just stay silent on because they just don't know, because anything could happen to it at any time.
Yeah. We need persistent hangars for freight elevators because the persistent hangars are meant to be where you can store cargo. And the freight elevators are essentially, you're supposed to call your freight. It comes in the freight elevator. You take it out and put it in your ship. The idea is meant to be that you can store that freight in your hangar until your ship is ready, or vice versa. Although I guess that's not necessarily a requirement. That's just something that they've linked with it. They've talked about them in the same context.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was easier to link the two, actual like mechanic wise. But once again, it's not features that they talk about a ton. So the only thing we know about freight elevators is that they bring freight to the hangar, and that's kind of it. So
yeah, and like the whole idea of persistent hangars is also, as somebody was asking in chat, like you can either own hangars in the place that you're always living, which probably means that you're not really paying that much for it, or you can rent hangars, which then requires you to pay more at a time. So overall, like there's a difference between persistent hangars and personal hangars. Personal hangars being the ones that you buy, persistent hangars just being the overall technology that supports them. Both seem like they're not going to be in 3.20.
Yeah, no.
So,
no.
Yeah. Another question. Do you think we'll see the separation of the replication layer by the end of this year?
I don't believe so, because I believe they don't separate the replication layer in static server meshing, which is what we're waiting on. I think that's for full server meshing. Well, so we won't see that until a very long time, theoretically.
That is, see, now there's you're missing out not reading those letter from the chairman. He did put that in the letter for the chairman this year of before server meshing, trying to get the replication layer going on its own. So I think that's where the question comes from. I don't know though. I feel like they are going to wait until 4.0 and just do it all at once at this point, instead of trying to do all of this over multiple patches. But yeah, it's who knows. Another one, with the Hull C slated for 3.20, what do you expect to be the community response when it's going to be heavily limited in what it can buy and trade? Got an assumption or two in there, but ultimately, how do you think people will respond to any sort of, difficulties, I guess, that come from trading with the ship?
The community is going to hate it, but tough. It's one of those things where it's like we actually talked about this when we were talking about the mining update in Citizen Central, where people were complaining that they couldn't just make an absolutely insane amount of money Quantanium mining anymore, but they were still making good money like doing regular mining, and everyone lost their minds. Of course, people are going to hate it. People hate change, but it's that's what the ship's designed there for. It's going to open up more gameplay opportunities, and then when we also get other locations, it's going to fulfill itself even more. Like, in general, I think people are going to love it, but there'll definitely be people complaining.
We're going to have a lot of I quit this game, this isn't what they should be doing moments throughout development, because there's a lot of features that they've confirmed, they've talked about, we know are going to be in the game that aren't super in your face. So when they get added, a lot of people will probably just leave the game. It's not a game for everybody with the way they're trying to make it work.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here's a good one. With the rise of griefing these public events, what tools would you like CIG to implement to make it harder for uninvolved parties to crash an event? I think this is a good one for you, being a public event person so much.
Yeah. So, in general, because it's not, I just want to point out. So, this is definitely coming from my video. I just want to point out from my video, I was not talking about creator events. I was talking about the game in general. And I would prefer that all options for preventing these things were in-game options, like hiring security and stuff. But the game is in a state where some things can happen and some things can be exploited that people just kind of have to deal with. And so that sucks. And so really the answer is like a bunch of things that will hopefully eventually arrive. So Bounty Hunter version 2, a more concrete understanding of what's going to happen with crimes, because crimes right now are in a terrible state where, like, I can ram you and you get crime stat sort of thing. And then for people who are truly exploiting and truly messing around with things, I think there should be ways of, blocking those people so that I don't have to, deal with them shouting at me, or I can, if they are doing exploits, that I can send in a report that isn't through Spectrum, basically.
Oh my God, yeah, seriously. Like, let me report glitches and bugs and stuff in the game, please. I would probably do so many more.
Yeah, but exactly. Like, that's probably the bigger thing. Is why can we not report bugs in game? That is crazy.
Yeah. Gosh, I would really like that. I agree with you. I think down to the most simple thing of like scanning is kind of not fully functional right now. And that makes it harder to defend yourself against pirates. You can't have somebody who's sitting out over the event scanning specifically in a certain range of distance and reliably knowing whether or not they're picking up people, because it's not super clear right now. So like that, being able to easily hire security to be there and have a system in game to hire and pay them, escrow, like there's so many different ways that it could be fixed to make these events more safe for people to run, but right now they're not. And that makes it really frustrating to try and run them.
Yeah. And then obviously, like, once again, the Arena Commander update's coming in 3.20. That's absolutely huge. I like that. That's massive for some of these events. But like people are still going to try to do fun things in the game all the time, regardless. So just having any sort of like, once again, even if it's an in-game mechanic safeguard, is something that I feel like is a must.
Yeah. Sounds like people are misunderstanding what you were saying in your own video.
So many people said that that I was the one getting griefed, and I'm not. Like, it's just not the case. I don't know. There's a lot of things. Let's just say I won't be making a video like that again for a while.
Love that feeling, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Next question. What are your thoughts on a possible episodic release of Squadron 42 being talked about at CitizenCon 2023? That's an interesting question. Because it is episodic, right? I mean, the 3 games technically are supposed to be episodes of the same story.
Yeah, they've been calling them episodes. I don't know. It's sort of a hole in my knowledge. The only thing that I can say is if the game that we get does not have minimum 80 hours of gameplay, that's bad. So if that's episode 1 and it has 80 hours of gameplay, cool. If it's all 3 episodes released together and it's 80 hours of gameplay, cool.
80 is a lot. I would take like
it is
30, 40. Like if they're doing this sort of linear kind of thing, no exploration or anything, I would definitely take like a couple dozen hours for a good story.
Yeah.
I just want a good freaking story, you know? Like,
well, yeah, that sort of depends on how like dense the story is too, right? Because the way that they've always talked about the game is that it's actually quite freeform. Like it sounds like there's a lot of side missions that you can kind of just take and do that are just pretty much the equivalent of the missions that we have in Star Citizen. So it'll heavily depend on that. But with the amount of like stars that they have in the game, if you even just gave all of them 100 lines, that's probably 80 hours of gameplay. There's a lot of people in there.
Yeah, it is a lot of stars. I wonder how that's going to work with episode 2 and 3. If they're going to continue to try and do the whole star-studded cast thing, or if they'll take a step back and go with normal actors.
Yeah.
Not the most expensive people in the world.
Yeah. Well, once again, it's just hard to tell because they haven't really said anything since 2018.
Right. Yeah. So that's our best answer. We don't know. But it is supposed to release in 3 different games. Generally, when people talk about Squadron 42, they're talking about just that first game, though. So we don't know much about the other 2. Have you ever played the classic DOS RPGs made by SSI and AD&D? These are a lot of acronyms. Also called the Gold Box series. 2 of those were actually space RPGs called Buck Rogers. Have you?
No. As I mentioned earlier, Baldur's Gate 2 came out and I was 6 years old. So no.
Yeah, I've not either. DOS RPGs, isn't that like on the computer with the programming?
Yeah, I assume they're talking about DOS. Yeah, like
yeah. I'm sorry, I'm a bit young. I wasn't even playing even when I started playing games, which was in the mid 90s or late 90s, I was like on a Nintendo 64. I was just getting my legs. I didn't really get into even computer gaming. Like I played Oregon Trail, StarCraft, and like Pajama Sam as a kid. A weird combination, but like I didn't actually get into computer gaming until like 2013. So
yeah. I think I built my first computer in 2011, and that's when I started properly gaming.
Yeah. So sorry to say, Trail was the best game ever. I would love a modern day Oregon Trail. I thought I heard that that's actually being made. It
was one that came out recently, pretty recently.
Yeah, I feel like they talked about there being both perspectives of the people on the Oregon Trail and then like Native Americans. And I would love to see like a full-blown RPG based on Oregon Trail. That would be cool. Because I died a lot in that game. That game taught me about death.
Yeah, this is the one. Yeah, there was one that came out in 2021, I believe. That was like a remake of another older version of it, but with like all updated stuff. I've watched someone play it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah? I'll have to check that out. I didn't know that was out. Cool. All right. Next and final question we've got right now. Now that CIG Legal has stated in a legal case response that the game has been released, do you have any game scope anticipation changes? I could care less what a legal statement says. The game is not, it's not released. I still think that they're just going to keep doing the same thing they've always been doing. I don't know what statement is being talked about, but I don't think anything's going to change in terms of development.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of what some of the marketing team has done with the advertising of Star Citizen, because they definitely make it sound a lot less buggy than it is. But until it stops saying alpha build or beta build, it's going to be irrelevant to me. The game is still an alpha.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good point. Like, I think the biggest thing was earlier this year when they were putting out their Playable Now ads, and everybody was like, no, it's not. And they kept doing it for 2 weeks, and everyone's like, can you please take these down? This is embarrassing. Yeah, it's just embarrassing. But I don't know any statement of legal release. I'm guessing maybe that has to do with selling stuff. I'm not sure, but
it'll probably be something where it's in some countries, consumer rights are incredibly advanced. Australia is one of those countries, and so if CIG say something about
big protected consumer guy over here, sheesh.
Look, refunds are really easy to get in Australia. I don't know what to tell you.
That's nice.
But no, in general, there'll be things where it's if you say a game is released and then you're claiming that it's not pretty much anywhere else, then that's grounds for lawsuits and stuff, which is probably why the terms that they use a lot more often is it's an alpha release or it's a beta release or anything. And it will not be something that just CIG do. I guarantee you Tarkov does it. I guarantee you DayZ used to do it. Every company that has a game in any stage like this will be doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. That's just how it be.
Yep.
All right, Croncy. That is all the questions we got for today. So,
Yay.
Yeah, cool, man. Hey, thanks for joining me again. Thanks for answering the questions, sitting out for the podcast. We were around for a long time, but I think this was a good little preview on what's going to be happening with CitizenCon and Alpha 3.20. I can see you're getting your camera started. OBS did the whole discolor thing. No problem. So that about does it. I am going to go ahead and for anybody who is here for the live stream, I will be sitting on the end screen for just a couple minutes here. Croncy's going to hop off and go live on his own, and we will go back over there and check out what he's doing. But for now, thank you everybody for coming to this Q&A. If you missed the podcast, that will be up soon, TM, probably in the next 12 hours. This will also be following on the same channel. But as always, folks, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Consider supporting if you want to help us keep doing these things. And come join us on Discord if you want to ask questions. We sometimes put up some Q&A threads beforehand, like we will be doing for Citizen Central this week. So if you want to come and talk to us more about these shows or just hang out, always happy to have you. Either way, folks, thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next week, I guess. Yeah, about next week for another show. And have a good week. Bye.
Have a good one, everyone.